In the social justice system, pompous virtue signaling is considered especially useful. In New York City, the dedicated late-night show host who virtue signals the hardest is a member of an elite squad known as the Special Victims Unit. Here is his story. Dun, dun. Yo, welcome to Unapologetic Live. It's Tuesday. Did you guys enjoy that intro? Because I enjoyed it.
That was fire.
If y'all don't know nothing about me, y'all should know that I love Law & Order SVU. Not Old School Law & Order. I hear Taylor's a fan of Lenny in Old School Law & Order.
I like Lenny's one-liners and dad jokes in the OG one. But yeah, I like them all, really.
And I am an Olivia Benson stan in Law & Order SVU. I've probably seen every single episode of that show. And the reason we're talking about it is because John Oliver, wanted to come out against Law & Order. Now, he tries to say, I recognize that it's just a TV show, and he says it about 10 times during this entire monologue that he does on Law & Order, but continuously attacks the show and its creator, Dick Wolf. And if there's anybody I'm going to come and defend, it's the cast of Law & Order SVU. So today, we're going to be reacting to John Oliver's monologue about Law & Order SVU and see what he's got all his tea and crumpets in a twist for. Sorry for all of you guys from the United Kingdom who are watching, who I've just offended, but you guys know John Oliver is annoying. So let's watch.
The time. And for many, it is comfort TV, but it and shows like it have a real impact. One study found viewers of crime dramas are more likely to believe the police are successful at lowering crime, use force only when necessary, and that misconduct does not typically lead to false confessions, which would be great if it were true. But if you're watching this show, you probably know it is not. And Law & Order in particular has become an American institution with huge cultural influence. Some have argued its formula shaped a generation's understanding of the legal system.
Okay, first of all, is it my fault if you get your understanding of the legal system from Law & Order? No. Is it the show creator's fault if you get your understanding of Law & Order, of the legal system from Law & Order? No. Can we separate the art from the audience and what is meant to be learning or training material from what is on TV? I think so. So if you're an American citizen who's watching Law & Order and you go, well, I'm now a practiced detective when it comes to homicide or sex crimes, that'd be your own fault, not the fault of Dick Wolf and the people who created Law & Order.
Yeah, it seems like on the left you have this theme of these elitist people like late night hosts and journalists who think that the common man is just too dumb to distinguish something like television from reality. We saw this a lot during COVID about misinformation. It's just like we have to give the approved narrative, and anyone who's defying that, a show that's defying that, a media personality that's defying that, we have to stamp it out. And I can't stand that it exists because these dumb people aren't smart enough to figure it out for themselves.
Right. And even if that were true, and even if people were truly taking Law & Order at its word, and this is their view of the legal system and the criminal justice system because they watch Law & Order, that is not the fault of the creator. It's not the fault of the people who are in Law & Order, who are some pretty fantastic cast and crew. And there's nothing that you need to do about it. You know, a lot of horror movies will say, like, based on a true story. That doesn't mean we go running around thinking that every horror movie that we saw is true. There's a certain amount of intelligence and trusting of your audience to decipher what is real and what is fiction. And a show, Law & Order, that is purely fiction should be seen as such. Let's continue.
And you've probably seen people using it as a go-to reference point like this.
I'm not an attorney. I watch Law & Order from time to time.
My legal experience is watching like a Law & Order and Law & Order SVU.
I think the average viewer of Law & Order probably knows that you're not supposed to do this.
Well, I went to a great law school, but most of what I do on a day-to-day basis is based off of what I learned on Law & Order.
You notice how he cherry-picked like videos of conservatives referencing Law & Order when you probably could have found hundreds, if not thousands, of people all across the aisle referencing Law & Order. And none of them were giving any validation to the show. They were using it in jest to say, you know, that's as far as my legal expertise or my criminal expertise goes is Law & Order, which means my legal and criminal expertise is very little. So, yeah, you can pull a bunch of clips of conservatives referencing Law & Order and try to use it for your argument, but it doesn't quite work, does it? Let's skip ahead because, oh my gosh, I have a feeling we're just going to get more and more irritated as we go on.
Some people take the show. In fact, just listen to Warren Light, Law & Order SVU's former longtime showrunner, talk about an unexpected group of viewers that he learned about.
We've also found out over time, and this is a little anxiety-provoking for me, that a lot of cops aren't trained in how to do their job in cases of sexual assault. And a lot of cops get a lot of their information from watching SVU, which a lot of police departments don't have the time or the money to put people through formal training.
Yeah, that's not great, is it? Nobody should be learning how to do their job from a TV show, unless, of course, your job happens to be telling jokes to mask your deep-seated feelings of emptiness and existential dread, in which case, keep watching, you might pick up some tips.
Fair enough. I would agree with that last statement there. But yeah, I don't think police departments should be using Law and Order, and it doesn't seem like they are. So if you listen to the statement he just made, he just said, you know, some cops watch SVU and they say that that's where they get their information on how to treat sexual assault. If that's where you're getting your information as a cop, maybe you need to reevaluate. But it doesn't sound as though police departments are the ones who are, you know, asking them to go and watch Law and Order. And yeah, police departments should have formal training for sexual assault. And I imagine a lot of people who go in and talk about police departments don't exactly know how they work. I can speak to a portion of LAPD, and that's the work that I've seen and watched them do in South Central, in Watts, in that area. And police departments are broken up into divisions. Like, you have police officers who are made, who are put together for specific things. So you have like a gangs unit detective, you have vice cops, you have cops that are specifically like rookie on the beat cops who don't have specific departments. So all of these different cops are going to run into crimes that they're not suited or formally trained to deal with. If you're going to formally train every single cop for every single sort of crime, you're going to deal with what? A lot of money that needs to be put into police departments. And are the people like John Oliver who are having these talks about the lack of formal training in policing institutions ready to actually give the money that it would take to formally train all police officers to be able to evaluate and respond to every single type of crime? Bet not. I bet not. I bet on the other hand of this, he's saying, oh, well, police departments need funding taken away from them and the funding should go elsewhere. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're going to have to choose, because the people who want to extend the funding to police officers and actually have them get formal training in these things are not on your side of the debate. Now, he goes into sort of Dick Wolf's background in watching other police shows as a kid and how he was influenced by Dragnet to create Law and Order, and how he is unabashedly pro-police. This is what Dick Wolf has said, the creator of Law and Order, of course, in previous interviews, and he's been very clear about that. And of course, John Oliver has his criticisms, because somebody who is pro-police making a show about policing is going to maybe reframe the conversation. Guess what? It's what everybody does who makes movies, television, any form of entertainment ever. Their values are injected into the things that they create. And if you aren't particularly pro-police, maybe Law & Order is not the show for you. But other people want to watch that. And if you're anti-police and you want to make a cop show that's anti-police, go ahead and do that. And I think we're going to get into a conversation about the framing of police officers in Law & Order, which I can't wait to jump into, because I have a feeling he's going to have a very left-leaning take on what is actually not really present in the show. Let's keep watching.
Present them like the Babadook. And again, you can absolutely justify those decisions by saying, come on, they're making fiction, not a documentary. Not everyone wants to watch hyper-realistic portrayals of our ever-desiccating society, John. And I do understand that. But it's not just the portrayals of defense lawyers where big editorial decisions are being made.
Pause. So he criticizes the use of defense lawyers in Law & Order and says they always make defense lawyers look bad. Okay, whatever. That's an artistic choice for their show, because they're being pro-police, pro-catching criminals, which would be pro-prosecutor. And he says, I get it. It's fiction. It's fiction. We're just creating fiction and anybody can watch that and create whatever they want. But it's like, no. The show ends there. The monologue ends there. It is fiction. They've created a show that is not real, and that's where the episodes end, in a place that started off not being real and ended not being real. Why is the criticism continuing in this monologue?
Yeah, he just is mad that this show exists and doesn't portray the police negatively. That's all that comes down to it. Is like a show exists that a lot of people like and that a lot of people watch that shows the profession of policing in a, you could say idealized way, which he also goes elsewhere in this video and talks about how they do deal with like racialized policing and different themes. Like they make it into the show. It's not this like, purely propagandistic piece of art. But, again, you make a crappy show where you talk about how terrible police are and portray them in a negative light, and see if people want to watch that, and maybe they do. And all, just like you can play a clap track on that show like you do on your show and after your bad jokes.
But it's like also he's talking about Law and Order as if it's like this purely idealistic view of what police officers are. There's police brutality in Law and Order that they show and they chastise the police officers for. There are police officers that completely betray their own departments and actually end up being invested themselves in crimes. There's tons of corruption at all levels of the hierarchy within policing. There's plenty of just mistreatment of both suspects and victims of crimes. So we're showing sort of a full scope of what can happen. Of course, it's going to tip the scale on the more positive pro-police view because that's who Dick Wolf is. But it's not at the expense of just simply not showing bad things that cops do, or else you wouldn't have drama in the show at all. So what do you want? I'm confused because it sounds to me like it's somebody, I'm getting so passionate about this. You sound to me like somebody who hasn't even watched Law and Order. And I'm passionate about it, not just because I love the show, but because so many people who talk about these things don't actually have an in-depth view of how police departments work at all. And we'll get into that more as he continues to speak, because there's more.
One study found that offenders on Law and Order were disproportionately white, male, older, and from the middle or upper classes. Dick Wolf's actually explained his reasoning for why the show's criminals skew that way, saying there are no rich white guy pressure groups. You can do anything you want to rich white guys and nobody cares. And you can see why he might not want to make a show in which his good guy cops are disproportionately targeting communities of colour.
Oh my God.
He wants people to like them. But the result of all of these...
Pause. Okay. So now they're saying Law and Order disproportionately shows older, rich white men as the perpetrators of the crimes and the people who get arrested and end up going to jail. Why is that? It's because of the environment that people like John Oliver created. He's the one who on his show all the time is very much anti-white, comes after white people, and particularly the white male older capitalist, which is in fact exactly what he is, but we won't talk about that.
Ironic.
And he comes after them. He has created a culture where you cannot criticize black people, people of color, low-income individuals, even though that is who's typically being arrested by the police. So Dick Wolf goes, okay, well, I want people to like my show. This is the culture they've created. I guess the perpetrators of these crimes are going to be mostly white, which is what the left would advocate for anyways. And if Dick Wolf woke up tomorrow and was like, you know what, we got to make it look more realistic to life. We're actually going to make 50% of the perpetrators black in this show. You guys would be up in arms, crying, screaming, yelling, how dare Dick Wolf show black people in this light? How dare he show them being arrested and put into prison? He's contributing to a culture that believes that black people just naturally go to jail, are inherently violent, all of these things. So do you want more black perpetrators in the show, Johnny boy? Or do you actually, and are you actually totally comfortable with white males being the perpetrators and the criminals in this case?
It's Kendyism 101. It's not did racism occur? It's where did the racism occur?
Right.
And of course, it's racist if you represent reality that there's a disproportionate number of black male offending criminals,
Right.
and that it's racist if you don't portray that reality because you're underrepresenting that. It's like, which one do you want? Do you want to go around policing every film and TV show in Hollywood and all the media coverage to make sure that there is an accurate representative representation of the
Right.
number of black criminals in the U.S. Because if you want to do that, then go for it. But what we've seen is your side tends to want to minimize that side of things. So
Yes.
it's like you can't have it both ways. Which is it?
Right. He'd make an episode the week after saying Law and Order is showing black people in a negative light. That's exactly what you would do.
Reinforcing stereotypes. We've
Right.
heard it over and over again.
It's unbelievable. Okay, we're skipping ahead. Where's my next timestamp here? Okay, here we go. Let's hear some more.
The disparity between Law and Order and real life is in its most popular spin-off, SVU. It is a show...
I'm already pissed. He came for Law and Order. Okay? Okay. I got through the first 16 minutes. Now you're coming for SVU? Detective Benson? John, you're gonna get full force Amala after this.
built on the appeal of having cops who will stop at nothing to crack horrific cases. Cops like Elliot Stabler, who, before getting a spin-off show, routinely did shit like this.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Hey, I get a little clumsy around scumbag pedophiles.
Why you gotta be so rough?
Because you still got one good arm left to break.
I should put you in pigtails, you little bitch. Come on, you little bitch. I want you to cry for me. Come on, tell me. Come on, cry for me.
So which is it? Are they showing cops in an ideal light where they do nothing wrong and everything's fine? Or are they showing cops like Elliot Stabler where he does mistreat people who are worthy of and have a right to due process? I'm getting confused here because you're saying one thing and then showing me another. You're showing me that they actually are showing cops who abuse the system and mistreat people. I'm confused. Is he trying to say that they make this look like a positive thing?
He's reading whatever he wants to into this show to construct this narrative because he just wants to make a big fuss about how Law and Order reinforces a narrative that he doesn't like. But again, you're literally contradicting yourself with the very clips that you're showing.
Yeah.
So it makes absolutely no sense. Side note, totally saw that actor at my gym in Hollywood a couple of years ago.
That's so dope. I bet he looks badass in person.
Yeah.
Is he just huge?
He's pretty buff, yeah.
Yeah,
in
pretty
shape
buff dude.
for sure.
I didn't tell you guys this. I saw Roy from The Office at Sweetgreen yesterday. He was standing in front of me in line. And he looked like he had just been working out or whatever, and he was just in line. And I was like, that's Roy from The Office. Didn't say anything, just
Casual.
respect.
I saw Toby a few months ago at my local neighborhood watering hole as well.
That's so weird.
LA for you.
Yeah, my first celebrity sighting is Roy from The Office. You know what? We're off to a good start, I will say. Let's see. 1834. Let's skip ahead. Okay.
Real world impacts.
Oh, wait. Okay, so he's going to talk about the real world impacts of
Survivors of sexual
Law
assault
and
are
Order.
taken seriously by the police. Hogate's even spoken openly about some of the show's positive real-world impacts.
I have so many times encountered people that have said because of this show, they knew what to do after their assault. Because of this show, they had a rape kit done. Because of this show, they reported and had faith in that. And because of this show, most of all, they didn't feel alone anymore. And to me, when I started hearing those stories is when I knew that it wasn't just a TV show anymore.
See, and that's the thing. Like, you can go and pick TV shows and whatever and point out as much negative stuff as you want. But a show like Law and Order SVU, gonna go out on a limb here and say has done far more of a net positive for people who watch it than a negative. It's destigmatizing sexual assault. It's telling victims that if you have experienced something like this, do go to the police force. And when it shows both good and bad policing in the show, it makes you aware of how you should be treated by police officers when you do come to them with a crime. What are some steps you might want to go through? And again, the show has no obligation to leave you educated by the time you finish it. These are bonuses from watching something that is pure fiction. They could lie up and down about the process, about how cops treat you, about what you should do after being a victim of any sort of crime, be that battery, assault, sexual assault, anything of that nature. They could lie and just make up a bunch of stuff. But instead, you can actually leave a show like Law & Order SVU and be like, you know what? I need to go to report this to the police. I need to get DNA. I need to get a rape kit. Here's how a police officer, like let's say you meet a police officer and one's rude to you and you go, oh, that's not what Olivia Benson does in the show. I should be treated with far more respect and far more legitimacy than what this cop is giving me now. These are all the positives that SVU brings about, but we can focus on the negative and reframing through a social justice lens about what the show does. But there's actually so much positive that it does for the world, even though it does not have to. Can't stress that enough. It does not have to. Let's skip ahead some more. Okay.
And child abuse. But if, as Hargitay says, the show encourages people to avail themselves of this system, it is worth knowing what that system can look like in practice, because it's not good. Government and press reports have repeatedly shown that New York's actual sex crimes unit is set up to fail victims of sexual assault. And its case closure rate is a long way from Elliot Stabler's fictitious 97%.
Duh.
The NYPD's official figures show that they only close about a third of sexual assault cases, but one analysis of cases handled over a 2-year period found they had a closure rate of just 6%.
Okay. Why might something like that be? First, you have what are, easily explainable negatives. You can go through the social justice lens and go, well, yeah, there's some cops who just simply don't follow up on things. There are people who don't legitimize the concerns of victims who come to the police force. But also, let's look at it through an ideal lens of, and I will try to put myself in the situation as best I can. I know it's very difficult to do so and to put your feet in somebody else's shoes. But let's think about that. If I walked out and was assaulted in some way, shape, or form, not only would I need evidence of such a thing occurring, meaning some sort of rape kit, DNA, whatever, that needs to be obtained quite quickly, although you do have a certain amount of time that can go past without collecting one where you can still get one after that. You would have to find the person who's responsible for doing this, get DNA from that person as well, prove that they were in the same place as you, prove that there was sexual contact. There's a lot of things that have to happen. And when you actually take in the numbers, and what are clear stats on most sexual assaults happening from somebody who you know, somebody that you often have a close relationship with. It can be a friendship, it can be peers, it can be somebody you're in a relationship with, it can be familial sexual assault. That's a whole nother layer of, okay, was there sexual contact with this person? How do we prove whether or not it was consensual? Maybe they were in a relationship, maybe they were friends, maybe this was family and we don't know how to prove whether or not this was consensual or whether or not it even happened. There's so many layers to sexual assault, and it's a crime that can often go without clear evidence that it is a particularly hard crime to prove and to prosecute. So do I want all victims of sexual assault to get their fair day in either court or however they decide to settle their case? Absolutely. But is that realistic? No. You've got something like look at murder or battery or something like that, where you're like, here's the mark, here's the person who did it, maybe there's a tape of it, maybe I have evidence, maybe I have the weapon that they used when it comes to the murder or the assault, and those things are a little bit easier to sort of tie up the loose ends on than a sexual assault where you have one person saying, no, I didn't, and one person saying, yes, he did. And these things can go on for a long time. That's why a lot of police departments will continue to search and investigate and try to find things, and cases go cold. And it happens a lot. Justice is something that we should seek out, but unfortunately, it's not something that we are always awarded. And I think that's something that we all have to sort of come to terms with. That's not to say we shouldn't strive for our police forces to be better, for there to be strides in the technology that goes around in investigating and prosecuting these cases, and that we shouldn't strive to have police forces that take all accusations as seriously as possible while trying to find out whether or not there was a perpetrator, and if so, seeing their day in court and finding them guilty. All of these things we should try and strive for, but we need to understand why it would be so difficult with a crime like sexual assault. 2153, let's skip ahead.
Nice. I follow him on Twitter. And it's worth knowing some survivors have spoken about what it is like seeing these detectives valorized on TV, with one saying, Law and Order SVU gave me the false impression that this squad cared deeply about victims and their jobs, and another saying, if I had $1 for every time I heard, this can't be true, Olivia Benson would never let this happen, I would have enough to cover my hospital bills and therapy for my trauma.
I'm sorry, but so what? I don't know what is supposed to be said about that. You can take testimonials from anybody watching any show. I could watch, I don't know, freaking Family Guy and be like, well, Family Guy gave me the impression that fathers stay in their kids' life, and my dad didn't stick around, so I'm angry at Family Guy. And now, if I had $1 for every time somebody turned on a cartoon and fathers stayed with their kids, I'd have enough money to pay for my therapy. You know, we can say that, but it comes with the caveat that TV is TV. It's not an accurate representation of what you're going to get in the real world. And again, if you are a police officer who uses Law and Order SVU as some sort of training for how to do your job, you are wrong. If you are a victim who uses Law and Order SVU as some sort of depiction of what it's like to be a victim and go to a police department, you would also be wrong. If you are anybody who watches a fictional TV show and thinks this is reality, this is what I'm going to find in the real world, you are wrong. And the onus is not on Dick Wolf and the creators and the actors to make it reality for you. It's to keep doing their jobs and keep you entertained. That's the extent of it. I don't know if you have anything else to say on that, Taylor.
I have claps to give. I mean, yeah, you're nailing it. If you're taking your cues from Michael Scott, or you think that that's like a small business should be run in that way, and that's your expectation,
right,
that's on you. And if you're the assumption on John Oliver's part that people should not be able to make that distinction, or we can't assume, like television creators can't assume that people can make that distinction is silly.
Right. And we get it. It's not necessarily a comedy, although there are comical elements to Law and Order and Law and Order SVU.
ER, for example, same deal.
Anything. And he's going to make this point, which we will get to, medical professionals in TV, and see if the point is valid at all. We'll get there.
Do Abner Louima. That's a terrible thing that happened, but that represents one or two bad apples in a police force of 35,000 people.
Exactly.
We're certainly, I think, the show over the last, all three shows are probably the best recruiting poster that you could have for being a New York City cop.
Right, because a recruiting poster is always going to be a propagandized, hero-washed version of the truth. A truth which is more often than not very ugly. And for the 300th time, I know Law and Order is just a TV show.
Then why are you making this?
I know it's meant to be entertainment. And honestly, I'm not even telling you not to watch it. It's completely fine to enjoy it. And it's completely understandable to want Olivia Benson to exist. But it is important to remember just how far it is from representing anything resembling reality. As one critic of Law and Order has put it, if a medical show was giving us inaccurate information, we would say it's dangerous.
See, this is a thing, and this is something that he does very well, is that he goes, I know it's just entertainment, guys. Keep watching it. And sure, we want more Olivia Bensons, we want more Law & Order, we want more SVU, we love it. Also, it's dangerous. So we make like this, smart little, what a nice little concession you've just made to us. But also, it should be labeled as dangerous. And no, this quote is wrong. If a medical show was giving inaccurate information, we would say it's dangerous. No, we do not. I don't know if you guys have seen medical shows, which I'm sure you have. Have you seen a nurse put in an IV in the medical show? I forget what I was just watching the other day with my boyfriend, but we watched this nurse literally like just take an IV in the shot and just perpendicular throw it into somebody's arm. Did I watch that and go, that's how you put in an IV? No. Have you seen any actor give CPR in any show ever? It's atrocious and would not give you the results of reviving anybody who you did CPR in that fashion on. Do I watch it and go, that's how you do CPR? No. I go to a class and I get CPR certified, which I am, in case you guys ever need it.
I feel safer already.
But no, you don't watch that and go, that's an accurate depiction of how they do it in a hospital, and that's what I want to do. The reason that medical shows get their accuracy, or at least try to be somewhat accurate and hire people like consultants just like police shows do, is they don't want it to be something where you watch it and you go, that's ridiculous and it makes absolutely no sense, because then you enter another avenue for criticism of your show. So they try to be as accurate as possible, but clearly they don't care about these little things like CPR and inputting IVs and giving the proper dosage of medication and all these different things, although they might strive to get that as accurate as possible. But it's, again, the onus is not on them to do that. The only reason they consult people and try to make it more accurate is that it adds to the entertainment factor. It adds to the realism of you watching the show and thinking, oh, I feel like I'm kind of in a hospital right now. But also you're not, because you're watching 10 models who are running around a hospital in their fake scrubs, giving fake medications to fake patients with fake IVs and fake CPR, and they're sleeping with each other in their restrooms and all this stuff. And it's not real.
Yeah,
Believe it or not.
And just to his point too about what's her name, Olivia Benson is the SVU.
Yeah.
Like to be angry about the fact that a show would portray someone in her role doing a good job is like, it makes absolutely no sense when you just take 1 second to think about, why do we make films and write great books about heroes in the first place? Because they're heroes. You have an idealized version of the person in that role. So yeah, maybe that the reality doesn't quite live up to her as often as we'd like, but the whole reason we make a character like that is so that we have someone that we have as a reference point to, hey, this is what a good person in that role would look like. That's the whole point of telling stories about heroes, is so that our culture has something to aspire to in those roles. And so to just say that that is doing harm just inherently, like, you can make a show about a flawed person who is not doing a good job, which there's plenty of, and that's equally valid. And I think within Law and Order, there's probably more flawed fellow detectives and people involved in that process. But to just like say it's inherently problematic to portray a law enforcement officer doing their job well is just mind-numbing.
Right. It's just like, I feel like the writers in his writer room for the week were just like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. And we need something. Law and Order SVU's got some, new episodes coming out. Maybe we should come after them, because it just seems like you're grasping at straws to do this.
Well, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Well, if they're in the writer's room of Law and Order, they would want to use that as an opportunity to push their perspectives and their ideology, and they're angry that a show of that size and influence and cultural impact, they're bitter that people want to watch that, and they're like, oh, these dumb people are running with a narrative that I don't like, and so let me just denigrate it as much as possible, and I should be the one that's in that writer room putting in my narratives. And it's like they're just missing it.
Right, which is so weird, because Law and Order, particularly Law and Order SVU, that's the one that I can speak to, has been really keeping up with the times as far as the pulse on how people feel about police officers and the protesting and all that. Like during the whole BLM stuff, their episodes had people protesting police officers, calling them out for police brutality. They spoke about Eric Garner, which John Oliver does touch on in this. So what is your criticism? Because to me, they're doing virtually everything in a way that you would do it for creating a television show. They're staying current. They're bringing up controversial issues and controversial views that people have on police, while still maintaining Dick Wolf's original structure of trying to be pro-police, while also showing the negative ins and outs of their jobs. So I think there's very little criticism to be placed on Law and Order, especially with all of the advocacy and work that they do outside of the show for victims of sexual assault, battery, homicide, all of these different things. They do work just way outside of the scope of Hollywood and TV and production for real life people and real life victims, particularly Mariska Hargitay, who plays Olivia Benson. So I'm just not hearing the criticism here. Really, all I'm hearing is what Taylor said. The show's not framed in the way that I want it, and it's not negative enough towards policing. And it's making young people watch it and go, police officers are good, and maybe I want to be one. Would you rather it be like a bunch of police officers beating up people and people being like, I want to do that. I want to abuse my power in that way. That's what the NYPD does. I'm going to become a cop. Like, what do you prefer?
Yeah, and here's the thing, that these woke people who do make shows, they flop. No one likes them, and no one wants to watch them.
They do.
And So if they made, there's a reason why, it's inherent in human beings. We want to have heroes to look after and strive for. It's the mystery formula is known ever since, in the 1800s, they had mystery novels all the way back then. It's just that there's a reason that formulaic television style works. Yes. So to just dismiss all of that context, and it's the same way they say if there's any disparity in outcomes, then it's 100% due to systemic racism, and they're dismissing if there's any misrepresentation of how police are portrayed, then it's 100% because they're pro-police and they're just trying to spread this propaganda, and they want to ignore how the police disproportionately target black people and they're corrupt and they don't really close rates. It's dude, no.
It's and you can tell he's not very convinced by his own monologue, because he had to go and argue with himself multiple times throughout. In intervals, he argues against himself from I guess a more right-leaning perspective, or just an antithetical perspective from what he's saying, because what he's saying makes no sense. And I think that's where it ends. It makes no sense. Are you guys fans of Law & Order and Law & Order SVU? If you are, drop it in the chat down below. Also, guys, we have a Discord now. The link is down below. Our ticket system has been down all day, which has been really frustrating because you guys have been just tripping over yourselves to get in the Discord. I think we let in, between yesterday and now, over 600 people into the Discord, and you guys are all chatting with each other, sharing memes, which I greatly appreciate. So we'll be happy to have you. Once you get in, if the ticket system is not working, don't worry about it. We'll get it up and running at some time. Our buddy Cam is working on that. But if it is, you're going to go to ticketing. You're going to create a ticket, and you're going to send a message with your email. That's very important. I know a lot of you were confused by it. Send us a message to the ticketing system with your email. We'll confirm you. It won't be immediate. It takes us some time to go through each and every single request and do it by hand. We will confirm your email, and we will let you in to the Discord server. So thank you guys for your patience. We do want to get all of you in, and all of you in there communicating with each other, and we will do that in a timely fashion if we can. That's it. Give me your thoughts on Law & Order, and was John Oliver hitting anything on the head here with his commentary? Let me know. I could be wrong. I could just be way too passionate about Law & Order SVU, and that might be shining through in my commentary today. But if you liked it, please subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we post a new video for you guys, which is daily. Enter the Discord, sign up for the emailing list, and have a fantastic day. Don't get arrested.